Welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast. Whether you're a first-time facilitator or a seasoned pro, listen in for tips and tricks to make a bigger impact at the next workshop you deliver. And now, your host. She recommends reading James Clear's book Atomic Habits, Leanne Hughes.
Hello everyone and welcome to the show. I'm your host Leanne Hughes and I'm here to help you develop and deliver workshops that kill. As facilitators and trainers, we're usually asked to not only deliver engaging and compelling workshops, but also develop the training materials and resources that go with it. The booklets, the PowerPoints, the handouts, the checklists, the flip charts. And it can get pretty labor intensive. I know it certainly does for me. And it calls on also like a pretty general skill set to do everything like that, to do the content development, develop the killer slides and handouts, as well as smash it when you deliver the workshop. I've been thinking about this recently, especially when we think about our strengths and how do we play to them and how much time do we really have to do it all. So I thought I'd call in an expert in design, a guy that has decided he's going to share his graphic and branding genius to help facilitators and training companies really drive engagement through the use of visuals. His name is Jason Knight and he blends HR and marketing together. What a killer combo. He's the founder and creative brains of Moved by Design, a design consultancy specialising in the user experience and the employee experience. He's based in Australia, but can help you out globally. And he's spent over 15 years creatively blending strategy and brand identity into powerful comms for growing brands and engaging employees. His company, Moved by Design, transforms boring learning and development into a people-first culture where strategic, customized corporate learning and coaching builds talent, brains, and businesses. So, look, if you think your materials are a bit average and you want next level, listen into this episode to pick up his ideas on how to improve your resources and ways that you can use design to really drive engagement in your meeting, your workshop, or your conference. So I've got a really great hack for getting some pre, during, and post engagement as well for workshops, which I really enjoyed and something I'm going to implement following this chat. I've also had a few listeners reach out and ask when part 3 of the 12 Rules for Facilitation is out, and that'll be released next week, so stay tuned. As always, you can continue the conversation when the show is over by joining the free First Time Facilitator community on Facebook. It's called the Flip Chart. You can find a link to that, plus other resources and links to contact Jason in the show notes for this episode at firsttimefacilitator.com/episode 61. Now, onto the show. I would like to welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast, Jason Knight. Jason, it's really great to have you on the show.
Hello, Leanne. It's awesome to chat. We've tried to connect a couple of times.
We have, and we've made it happen, which is amazing. On a nice sunny Monday morning in Brisbane. I'm assuming it's a bit cooler where you are.
Yeah, the jackets are just starting to come out of the wardrobe.
Fantastic. Now, Jason, you're a bit different to any other guest I've had on the podcast. Most of our previous guests are facilitators, but I love that you work in design and you really help facilitators through that process. But I was wondering if you could first start with sharing a bit of your story, some of the career pivots that you took to where you are now running your own company, Moved by Design.
Absolutely. I'm not too sure where to start, but I'll probably start with a little joke that I often say, that I sort of failed primary school and topped uni. And look, that circles back to why I become interested in learning in the first place. But short answer is, studied industrial design or product design at uni, came first in the course, topped uni, got the university medal, got a job out of that with Electrolux to work on my thesis project. So in other words, I took my idea to them and got it into a working prototype. I learned very quickly that business is a different world than uni. And I found myself probably at the end of sort of a couple of years, contract ended. I was doing odd jobs for friends for pretty much free. And it was doing more graphic design. And out of that got started into essentially what I do now, which is a blend of graphic design and facilitating. So I worked with a company called Amazing People, where a couple of other people that you know also worked. A big shout out to Murray Guest and Rayleigh Hobson. So that is a company that essentially did training for leadership and coaching and development. And I was there to be a graphic designer and just loved it, where I could see the impact of, or essentially see the fruit of my work, that I'd do some work and immediately the people that we were engaging with or training, had light bulb moments and aha moments. And it was no longer a 3-year process. It was almost an immediate wow factor. So look, after that, worked at a bunch of design studios until I was brave enough to launch Moved. And it's probably been, 10, 15 years I've been playing around that field, from graphic design through to training materials until, more recently, until only the last sort of yearish, where I've actually said, hey, let's focus more on that HR marketing blend.
I love that you've chosen that niche. So my background is I did study HR at university, but I didn't top and get a university medal like you did. What an inspiring story, by the way, of not doing so well in primary school and then topping out at uni. It just shows you that you really found something like your zone of genius, which is great. But I studied HR for a while, and I actually had a quarter-life crisis and moved into marketing. And then 5 years ago, moved back into organisational development. And I think it's a wonderful blend. I think to have some sort of experience in how you influence others using marketing skills can really help people in those quite learning and development roles. When you were working for Amazing People, I guess that was the first time that you were tasked with designing something that was training. And I imagine it's a bit different to pure market design or industrial design. Can you share what you learnt at Amazing People when it came to creating these resources?
Wow, I learned so much. Probably the biggest thing that comes straight to mind is just designing it for readability in a room. So it's no longer does the poster look cool, or is it trending? It's more for, hey, if this is on a flip chart or a poster and people are 15 meters away, is the typeface legible? Are the colors engaging? And is the message distilled so much that in a flick of an eye that someone can get what you're trying to say, rather than it being a poster with 20,000 words?
Yeah. And I think most of us, if we don't have design experience, I guess we just think, my font size needs to be at least 40. But we don't really think about the colors and I certainly don't think about typeface. I think I just use default options. So when you're working with, facilitators, and I have seen, but when I'm working in my roles in an internal company looking for facilitators, you go onto Google, you have a look at different websites, and geez, there's some shockers out there. I feel for these facilitators. What are some things that you see when you look at training material or even marketing collateral of facilitators and trainers that you just kind of cringe, especially given your experience?
I think you've opened up a whole, we could have our own podcast just on this one topic here. This is an enormous topic. I guess the real crux of it is that most of the websites, particularly around facilitators, are what I see as a tick box process, in terms of they've, hey, I need a website. So, I did it 10 years ago and it's up, so it's good enough. And most of them talk about what they do rather than the solution that they bring to their client. So a big part of what I try to communicate across to all of my clients is that people aren't looking for you to tell them how good you are. People are looking for a solution. So they're on Google typing in, I need a facilitator in this. So they've already got a frustration that they're trying to solve. So by you communicating that in that first couple of paragraphs or your first few lines are really, really important to, to getting clicks and to getting someone to contact you.
Yeah, I know this, but I've also fallen into that trap of, I don't know whether we think we need to just boost our credibility or what it is, but it is, you do have to, I guess, snap yourself out of it when you look at your website and think, oh gosh, I haven't even really pitched a problem here. What do I actually solve? And getting very clear on that is very important. I noticed that you've got some great ideas on designing training materials, and you've got your top 5 tips. I was wondering if you could share those with our listeners, that they're wonderful.
Yeah, sure. So do you just want me to launch into them?
Go for it.
Absolutely. So my mini crisis was, the last 12 months that I really, questioned whether or not branding was cutting through enough. And I was forced to look at, well, what happens if you, the employee journey. And so for the top 5, it was really about just trying to simplify it so that anyone can pick this up and make a difference in their learning and development. So the short of it would be to start with to make it short, so to distill the message down to as simple as you can. So some of the stats are that, our average attention span is now under 8 seconds, and nearly 2/3 of people prefer videos under 60 seconds. So the make it short, I feel, comes a lot into how people consume social media, and we really need to think of training in that same type of way. Like we flick or we scroll through social media, and we need to think of training in the same way, that people can snack on various elements rather than giving them the old thesis, or rather than giving them a giant meal, a 200-page manual. It's like, why don't we give them bite-sized pieces and see which items that interest them, and then from that they can go on a journey to discover more. So number 1. Number 2 would be to make it visual. So the human brain can process visuals about 60,000 times faster than text. And this is probably back to the Amazing People world, is to put up some core models or put up some frameworks that really help communicate the essence of why people are there, or the journey that they're about to go on. And then as they go on it, fill in the blanks around it. So it's not necessarily to have a perfect picture that no one writes on it. I've learned that people retain information more if it's built in front of them. But one of the tricks, not everyone's a designer and not everyone's a great illustrator. So one of the tricks I've worked with facilitators is to do an outline, or essentially to print flips or posters where the framework is in, say 10% of the final output, so that they're able to trace around the model or trace around different elements to bring it to life in front of the client, and they don't feel like a goose because they have got something, they've got a cheat sheet to follow. So yeah, that's one great way of making it visual in front of a client and really being able to retain information.
I've kind of cheated as well, just prior to running a workshop, where I've had like a light pencil and just pre-drawn flip charts and then drawn over it. So I really like that idea. Yeah, awesome.
Exactly. And it's a funny one, because I came into that with the exact opposite pretense, that I assumed that if I presented perfect, from a design point of view, brilliant 3D models and all these, people would get wowed. But as soon as you present it like that, people see it as finished and don't engage with it. Whereas if you build it in front of them, if you hand draw it, or if you sketch it, or if you draw over the top of a model or over the top of a framework, then people instantly start, it's being built live in front of them, and they take it in as, they then own it. They then take it in as, engagement. So
yeah, very powerful. Thank you.
Number 3 would be to make it entertaining and across multiple channels. So this is probably, it's a little bit about how you facilitate, but probably more so about how the content is delivered through either video or infographics or even on a printed manual. So the make it entertaining is that videos account for about 74% of online traffic, which is crazy. Whoa. But it's a funny blend between, not comedy as in stand-up laughing, but it needs to be educational, but also a bit lighthearted. There's this funny blend between cat videos and someone standing up there and just reading a sermon. And if you can blend those two, you really are able to capture your audience. So yeah, infographics, videos are a great way of making it entertaining and engaging through different channels. Yeah, whether it's, as I said, whether it's video or infographics or print or whatever it is. But yeah, blending those two together. The 4th would be make it interactive and not be afraid of new technology. So there's a massive push for, AI, artificial intelligence and virtual reality. But a lot of that can be done really selfish. So sure, yes, it's great if everyone's got that budget to integrate them into their training, but a lot of people don't. But we can do some things that are really, really simple. In other words, get an iPhone and video how people are going to, like an onboarding process of how people are going to be, I guess, their environment that they're going to be sitting at. So rather than people coming in scared on their first day, that they already know who's sitting next to them, the rough layout, that that there's a team of 5 people already said g'day and smiled at them. And this is authentic and simple, but yeah, we still shy away from making technology or using technology to our full advantage. So simple things like that, I think would make a massive difference with it. And the last is a little bit outside the box, but seen some amazing work where I guess using the team members as thought leaders via social media. So in other words, making them influencers. Some of the stats is that 65% of consumers trust personal recommendations from another human being rather than a branded message. And 60% of CEOs don't even have a social presence. There's this crazy mix-up of using your team members to share socially on a topic that they're passionate about, whether it's on LinkedIn or on Insta, and heroing them so they become their own little thought leader on a niche topic. And all of a sudden, their community knows that what they're passionate about, and it also helps funnel things into the business.
Yeah, it's funny about thought leadership because on LinkedIn, you definitely see people that have their own business or solopreneurs. It's very easy for them to step out and share their thoughts. But I did notice, especially working in corporate, not a lot of my colleagues were sharing a lot at all. And maybe they devalue the work they were doing. These were incredibly smart people working on amazing projects. I was curious as to why they just weren't confident. And I think possibly maybe policy might have held them back, a social media policy, but I can see that kind of loosening as companies now are understanding this. So I think looking into the future and working with people in corporates on this, it's probably a good idea because they need to start stepping up and really sharing and becoming their own thought leaders. I think it's a really great idea. On your topic of video, I really love point number 4 about making it interactive and the onboarding experience for a workshop. It's not something I've really explored a lot on this podcast. I did do my first video for a client recently. So, and I know you love the Strengths Finder tool. Can you share offhand what your top 5 are? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I did think that you might go there. So woo, ideation, communication, positivity, and strategic are the top 5.
We shared 2.
Yeah. And I've seen them work, I guess more and more as I step more into that strategic facilitation of brands and also of the employee experience. Yeah, more as I hold that place of where a business and where a journey is going rather than just simply as a designer, which is, the background. So, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, good on you. And so we shared ideation and positivity. And so with that strengths workshop I was facilitating, I had to, you got the text instructions you can send out to participants, but I did a quick video. I'm like, hey, I'm Leanne. I'm going to facilitate these 2 days. Part of that is completing this strengths thing, blah, blah, blah. It was a very short video, pretty amateur, but hey, it worked. And what it did was people would then, they knew who the facilitator was, so they were a bit more comfortable. They could find out more about me. They all made the deadline. So they actually all completed the strengths assessment on time, which is very rare in my experience. And I think just the extra value to the client of just getting the courage to do the video, you can see the engagement. It really works. And great idea to use it to, shoot the conference location and give some more information so they're not feeling that uncertainty and, a bit nervous before stepping into that day. So that's a great idea.
100%. I think if we can put ourselves in not just the client, but the user's seat and look at, what are the anxiety points and how do we reduce that? I think the video is a massive thing for pre, post, and even during workshops. So look, we've all played a YouTube clip or something like that. I know I have through a session to try to help communicate a point, but look, and you just shared an amazing way to especially onboard or the pre-work that you can do. But even after it, why isn't there a couple of articles from Forbes to some extent, but even a couple of little videos that are shared of, hey guys, really loved how we shared XYZ, keep up the great work.
Yeah, that's right. And you can sort of drip feed those videos a week after or 2 weeks after when the momentum of the workshop's over and everyone's back in the real world. Hey, I'm actually starting to set up. It's very DIY. Again, you'd probably cringe if you saw my setup, but I've got this spare room at home. It's a bit of a junk room. I'm clearing it out and I want it to be my video room. So I've got a couple of lights. I've got a backdrop light and I'm testing out with colors and things like that. What is that's pretty boring though, but what are some good background ideas for facilitators that want to start doing this? Should we just be normal and just do it in our environment wherever we are, or is it useful having a room like this to set up? What are your thoughts on that?
Great question. Look, I have done 2 things. I have Look, so I'll share the gear that I use, but also probably the biggest or the most wow when most people jump on a video call with me is that I've got a wallpaper section where I designed the wallpaper in this sort of graffiti grunge, but also on brand section. So it's sitting sort of next to me. So as soon as they jump on the call, they're just like, wow, like, where are you? And this is amazing. Oh, wow. So I think there's a place for having a bit of consideration of, I guess, the background or the look, because there's nothing worse than jumping on a call with a client and then seeing, I've done it with a couple of freelancers that I used, and there's you see their bed in the background rather than you just go, yeah, that's not so cool. So I think the environment absolutely matters, but probably not more than the message. So I think it's really, look, if you've got nothing more than a plain wall, then absolutely use a plain wall, and it's not distractive. But sorry, you don't get impacted by, I don't know, the cat walking past or as I said, the bed in the background. You're just like, oh my goodness. But yeah, I think the background is really important because it sets the stage that people judge you in your first few seconds of video. Like, is this going to be impactful for me? Is this worth me watching? So, and the next would be microphone and lighting. So yeah, a great microphone makes a difference. Yeti is a great spot to start. They're super cheap. They're like, $70 or something like that. And then you can go up from there. I know people that spend, $1,000 on a great microphone. So a light that faces, I guess, soft light that hits your face from above to help represent the sun is that next level. But yeah, that's probably the 2 to 3 tips that I can pass on real quickly.
Yeah, cool. And what camera do you use? Do you think smartphones are okay, or is there like a mid-range kind of camera that facilitators can look into?
Yeah, again, that's a huge question. It all depends on I call it a brand essence, but all your vibe. So some facilitators, Taki Moore is a great example of, I think he's the $1 million coach or something like that. He literally just does an iPhone and walks around with it. So you see the beach and you see where he's at, and he does this type of really authentic, casual sort of video really well. For me, I've gone a bit more of, I guess, we're looking at the professional view. And I bought a little Canon M50 not very long ago, only a couple of months ago. And it shoots amazing quality. It was definitely under $1,000. So yeah, but it's like anything. You buy that, and then you need to buy a tripod, and then you need to buy a microphone. And then it never stops. So.
It doesn't stop. I bought some white backdrop paper, some special paper, and then it's like, oh, this is too heavy to hang on the wall, so I need to get the stand. And then I was like on YouTube, and apparently you can use cardboard, and I'm just like, oh, this is. It's just, and in the meantime, like a whole week's gone by and I haven't even shot a video. So you can procrastinate.
Well, totally. I 100% understand the perfectionism. And yeah, I think also being a designer, I sometimes evaluate myself on, the best of the best out there rather than just saying, hey, I need to produce content and get it out live rather than, is this up there with the very best in the world? It's like, yeah.
Yeah, that's tough because that's what you do. It's design.
Yeah.
Hey, can we, I'd love to get a screenshot of your background and we can put it in the show notes for this episode if any of our listeners are curious as to what your wall looks like.
Love to.
So, and you do design wallpaper for people? Like, could I just go, hey, here are my 5 strengths, design me something?
Yeah, totally. So it's not the norm because it's, I normally do the bigger projects, but at the same point, I just finished pretty much designing a space for another podcast called My Millennial Money. I don't know if I can anyway, I've done it now. I've already shared it.
No, but this isn't the ABC. It's fine.
So yeah, Glenn James, a client of mine, and I designed up a similar type of a feel. So we put a little link to the video because it actually shows me designing it.
Yeah, that was unbelievable.
It's less about, do you do, wallpaper, and it's more about what is your brand and who do you stand for, and then how do we best communicate to the world, and that's where all the little projects fall in. Whether it's a video or a wallpaper or a logo, it all fits under that umbrella of who you are, what are you about, and how do you inspire and transform the world.
Yeah, and I think I'd imagine you get a few sort of people approaching you and saying, hey, I just want a logo. I don't want the strategy, but it is connected. Just give me a business card. Just pick my color.
Yeah, and look, there's a place for that, and there's also a place for the bigger picture mapping. So, yeah.
Yeah. I've got this Facebook group. It's called The Flip Chart. So listeners just join in and we just talk about different things. But actually, I think it was last week, we had a listener post up a poll, and it was, what's your approach to booklets? Like, do you get it printed? Do you design it A4, print it yourself? Do you get a binder and brand it? And I thought that was an interesting question, and everyone had their own sort of favorites. I guess mine, because I had time pressures of working in my old job, was whatever I can do and print myself is just because I know we're changing things at the last minute, which probably isn't a great approach, and you do then lack the really great design. But I mean, that's in terms of booklets. But you notice anything any different, any client requests for stuff that are outside the traditional booklet and printed materials? What are you noticing?
Yeah, good question. Look, probably the last couple of years, my whole world doing training material was booklet or manual design. And it was something that I probably, wouldn't be as strong as hate, but I just did it in a like, this is terrible. Like, this is the bottom of design. Like, why the heck am I doing this? And it was only, the last couple of years, I just got a whole new understanding of how that can be turned into a place of inspiration and connection. So a big part that I've seen lately is where clients, through a bit of a conversation, have started to think outside the square. So onboarding, we've now started to do some games. So rather than just simply having an A4 thing that they read or a PowerPoint deck that people fall asleep in, we printed out some of the vision, I guess a big vision map on a giant puzzle piece where people can then, groups put the puzzle together, and that helps communicate the shared values and what the business is about. So I guess just ways to bring things to life. So anyway, that's a real simple one that we've done. And then trying to bring all this information to life. So we've done little tent cards that sit on people's desks that have not the vision statements, it was more, but yeah, just ways to, so little tent A4 cards that communicate the values or communicate how to do coaching calls with people. And probably the most recent is then taking what was a manual and then making it more of a video. And so one of the ways we did that was they had a huge cost of flying facilitators all around the world, which is probably going to be a bit of a downer for your listeners. But we flipped it around on its head and said, well, what happens if we take that cost and use the managers who are all around the world, and they can essentially be the facilitator if we give them a video, which is essentially a coaching video. It says, watch this, pause for 5 minutes, ask these questions, watch this next piece, pause, ask these questions. And the way that it was recorded wasn't $1 million contract. It was just simply the learning and development person recorded it on their audio on their iPhone. That was sent to us. We then chopped up heaps of different photos and videos that we had of stock of their company and overlaid it with the questions. And all of a sudden, the facilitator wasn't the hero, but the manager was the hero, where the questions were meant to come back to the manager anyhow. So it became a really successful performance management process that we rolled out through video. So
Wow, I really love that idea, especially looking at leaders for the future. And it really is about leaders adopting a more facilitative approach. And having a guide like that and having a tool that they can sort of use and not just be thrown in the deep end and having to run a full workshop, but just enabling coaching conversations with support. That's excellent. It's a really great way of scaling, because a lot of companies now have people based in different areas and locations. So that's a brilliant idea. And I like your tent card idea as well. And it's interesting when you mentioned like how you personalize that tent card for the company's values or things like that. I was thinking it's kind of like if you could design a workshop, but design it like you were planning a wedding in terms of the level of
I love it.
personalization. Yeah. How much effort goes into a wedding and everything is so personalized. Like I went to one in Sydney in December and it was bottles of Moe and everyone had their own name on it. It was just unbelievable. You think, gosh, if we took 5% of what's done at weddings into workshops, what a win that would be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. And even the excitement of going into a wedding, there's all this the pre stuff. And I feel that a lot of that has been missed in the past with workshops, that it is, this main event that happens, but people walk in going, oh my goodness, I've got all this work to do, and I have to have a day off, or I have to have this half day off. They're almost frustrated walking in.
They are.
You can reframe all that by just what you shared, by having a little video saying, hey, this is who I am. This is what you're going to get out of the day. Thanks for giving up your time. Hearing where people's anxieties are and then replacing them with some gold, man, it just flips the whole day around.
It does. It makes a job as a facilitator, when it's a positive environment they're walking into, so much easier than spending all that time getting everyone comfortable and feeling safe. Like, you just launch straight into the good stuff.
Totally. And that's where, again, where Rayleigh Hobson, a good friend of both of ours, has often comments in the stuff that I provide her when she goes into the training, that people walk in and just go, wow, that their first step into the door, there's already these amazing learning journeys or graphics or concepts up on the wall that people say, hey, this is going to be different. And hey, I'm already open to being shown something here or engaged here.
Amazing. You do some amazing work, and thank you so much for choosing our niche to focus on, the HR, the learning and development stuff. It's great to have someone that's won a university medal and just done I love that wallpaper that you did, and we will share the video. Like, you do think next level, and your designs are very contemporary. It's trendy. And if any listeners want to get your help when they're designing content and training material, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Look, easiest would be the website, moved, bydesign.com.au, and also LinkedIn through Jason Knight. And yeah, sure, I'm on Insta and Facey, but nowhere near as much as the other two. So yeah, jump on LinkedIn or jump on website would be great.
Perfect. And thank you so much for the conversation and dropping some really practical tools, and even telling us what microphone and camera to buy, and just some really useful ways that we can just make some next level content and design for our next workshops. I really appreciate your time.
Awesome, Leanne. And yeah, look, I think it's just, don't be afraid. Just jump in, start. I think that's probably the biggest message. Start, and then you can always improve. So
I completely agree with that philosophy. Definitely take action. Stop thinking about it. I've got to tell myself that too. So
me too.
Thanks, Jason.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks so much for sticking around. You've reached the end of another episode of the First Time Facilitator podcast. Connect with the show at firsttimefacilitator.com, or follow me on Instagram at Leanne Hughes to find out what I'm up to during the week. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share it with someone who will also appreciate the insight, and make it easier for yourself and subscribe to the show in your podcast player of choice. Thank you so much for listening, and chat to you next week.